Check, check. Oh, look at those audio waves.
About damn time.
Ooh, Travis is back.
Now it hurts.
Yeah, no, this is going down a little bit.
Well,
Check.
No,
Yeah, that's good.
But you usually don't talk that loud when you're going.
What do you mean? Do I talk like this?
Yeah, you usually.
Oh, my God. All right, guys. We're going to start with part 2 of the training FAQ that we started last week. And, yeah. Get right into it.
Yeah, I don't think I have any announcements this week. No announcements.
But a lot of answers.
A lot of answers, though. We got how many questions do we have left on this?
5.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should be able to smash through those.
All right. When it comes to the order of exercise in a program, does it matter if I change things around?
This is the one. Actually, I guess I can't. I was going to say, this is the one time I can say it doesn't depend. Like, the answer is always no, don't do it.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
there's always a situation where you can do something. You know what I mean? I mean, so let's say it like this. Like, you just got done doing barbell squats. And now you have dumbbell alternating bench press and lunges or leg extension or just accessory exercise, right?
Yeah.
You can switch those around if there's no equipment at the gym, right? Like, so like you go to do a dumbbell bench press and there's nothing there. You're like, fuck, okay, well, I'll go do my T-bar row first and then I'll come back to it.
You have to switch it up.
You have to.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But if you go up to the squat rack to do your barbell squats and that's like your main compound lift a day and you're like, oh shit, someone's on the squat rack. I'm going to go do, my leg curls and my leg extensions and all that stuff first. And then when they get done, I'll come back over. I would say, no, just wait. They're not going to be there for longer than 10 minutes, hopefully. So just wait or jump in with them. Nowadays, people who are training are usually training at home or they have to be so far apart from each other that this probably never happens anymore because of COVID. But in most cases, if it's a compound lift, if it's a heavy lift, do not change the exercise order because you will squat way differently if you do a bunch of shit before you squat. Not only from a form perspective, and an injury prevention or risk perspective, but also from a performance perspective. Yeah. There's no way I'm going to be able to squat as heavy if I am doing leg extensions or leg press or pistol squats or any of that stuff before I get to that squat.
Yeah. In that same session.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So 99% of the time I say don't do it. And even on some other stuff, I'm so meticulous with programming that I hate when people are like, well, I flip-flop these days. Can I train these exercises? I'm like, no. Like, I made it like that for a reason. Don't change it. Or, like, I've even had people like, oh, I bought density, and I was going to change this, and I switched this to this, and I changed the rep ranges on this. And I'm like, you're not doing the program anymore.
I was going to say, did you program for yourself?
Exactly. Like, why'd you buy it?
Yeah.
Like,
or hire your coach. Different situation.
Yeah. So most of the time I would say no, but there's always a time where it's like, you're doing like low fatigue, low
Do you get that
injury
a lot?
risk.
I don't know what the definition of a lot is, but like out of 10 clients, you even have 2 people always changing?
So this is one of those questions where that's a really bad question to ask me now because I can be more selective with who I work with. I don't work with as many people anymore.
Okay.
My team works with way more people than I do.
And it happens more often than not with others.
Exactly. So
you told me to eat
and
strawberries and I ate a hamburger.
You told me to eat, right? It's the same thing. Well, in the membership site in the Taylor Trainer, it probably happens more than I realized too because I can't handhold everybody in there.
And I wonder how many people do it without saying something.
100%. That's what I'm saying.
Still paying for it.
Yeah. And then there's people who change stuff. And so there's a few scenarios here. Number one, I don't get it as much anymore just because like the people I work with are usually pretty damn committed. And they're like, I'm going to do what's written exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll stress. Like shout out to Daniel Wheeler, Cash Wheeler. He's one of the new wrestlers I got.
Yeah.
And he like texted me and he's like, I don't have a seated cable row at my house gym, so what can I do differently? And I was like, well, do dumbbell chest supported rows. Don't worry about it, man. Just go heavy. Focus on putting your elbows here to target the same muscle group, blah, blah, blah. And then he sends me a message. He's like, I almost did it, but I said, fuck it. And I drove to the gym anyway. He's like, I want to do the program exactly how it's written. And then he got to the gym, and they didn't have something that he needed, and he ended up going back and working out. But people like him are like, no, fuck that. Like, I'm doing it how it's written.
Yeah.
Like, I want to do this exact program.
There had to have been a reason why you put that instead of the other one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of times where we get that. There is, like, for compound lifts, I say, oh, don't do it because you're going to end up harming your performance in certain
Don't
things.
do it. Don't change it up.
Don't change it up.
Yeah.
But there's also times where there's things in certain order, not only from a energy perspective. So from a fatigue and energy perspective, I'm going to squat towards the very beginning of my workout because the barbell squat is taxing as fuck, right? Like on my squat day, I do barbell squats, then I do RDL, then I do front squats to a box, then I do step ups and leg curls, right? If I did any of that before my barbell squats, which are the lowest rep, the heaviest move of the day, I'd probably hurt myself.
Yeah.
So I just tire myself out. So in that case, it's like an absolute no. In the case where like maybe I did that and then I went to do an RDL and I didn't have a bar, I could go do the pistol squats or something first and then come back to the RDLs. I'll be fine because it's more of a muscle building exercise. I'm not going super heavy. It's not going to affect my performance too much. And then there's also the case where you can do it not in the order, but in exercise selection. So for example, the program I do, and this is like good coaching, is interactive. So like Eric has the program he wants me to do. I like changing things up because I get bored and I've been doing the same shit for a long time. So I told him, I was like, hey, what ones are you like, you have to do this, you can't change them, don't touch them. Because I know that there are certain ones like that. And he was like, don't touch the squat, don't touch the bench, don't touch the deadlift, don't touch the overhead press, don't touch this row. Like he gave me the ones that like I want to see you progressing week to week on these. And then I was like, okay, cool. Everything else, I'm going to stick with the same muscle group, same movement pattern, but I'm just going to change it up. So I go from a seated neutral grip cable row to a wide grip to a chest supported row to a T-bar row. I'm doing the same shit, but it just feels different and it's exciting. So, you know, if you're at the gym and you're like, all right, well, I have to do a cable chest fly right now and the cables are taken. Go over to the pec deck and do the machine fly or a dumbbell fly. You'll be fine, you know. But for your barbell squat, for your barbell bench, for your deadlift, the things that you are trying to progress week to week and add weight to, just stick with them. Don't change them. You're just messing up the program. And then the last thing I will say too is people have to be aware of posture. So a lot of times people will be like, okay, well, I didn't put anything in front of squats because I know that'll tire me out, but I changed this and this or this and this. And if you look at the posture alignment, it can cause issues with your joints. So if this is, for example, this is why I actually don't like push-pull legs with some people, because if some people are in a super kyphotic position, which is like very hunched over, like their shoulders are kind of rolled forward because they have a lot of protraction, gonna most likely mean they have some shoulder. Dude, it's next door.
Oh my god.
So if they're in a protracted position, they're probably having some shoulder impingement. They need to be in extension, right? So if they're sitting all day, they have tight hip flexors, they need to do some hip extension. So I don't like doing a push-pull legs because then I'll spend a full day pushing and doing shoulder and chest and tricep, just encouraging that. Yes, yeah. I'll have a full day of pulling, but those are the people where I'm like, all right, every time you do push, we're doing a pull right afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I want to get you into a better posture.
For sure.
So sometimes that's a problem too. But
I feel like also with more with like people that are uneducated on how to program or why you're doing what you're doing in your program, but like if they're maybe you're doing that specific workout or that specific rep or whatever it may be for a certain reason because you know their prior injuries or they're prone to something else, and then they're like, I'm not gonna say they're like, I just don't want to do that. Well, then why'd you hire a coach? But they're like, I could do this differently. I could do this other one, and it wouldn't be a big difference. Well, it might be because of injury or because of doubling up on two different muscle groups. You know, it all comes back to there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
But if you change it up, there could be a lot worse repercussions.
Yeah. Well, and that's why you have to talk to your coach. Like,
exactly.
Don't just change it up.
Yeah.
Like, ask your coach first, because there are times where if people ask me and it's okay to change it, because I know that'll motivate them and keep them training. Yeah, I'll tell them like you can change this one. Don't touch this one.
Yeah.
You know, like if I have somebody doing a front squat instead of a back squat, there's probably a reason. You know, I like a high bar back squat because it's the one compound lift you can really load up the quads. But if somebody has a back issue or poor hip mobility, I'm not doing a back squat.
Yeah.
I'll probably do a front squat because when you put the load in front, it drops the load significantly. But also, there's way less compression on your spine. So I don't have to worry about low back issues because you're in a compressed position. Your abs are engaged, which is why front squats are harder and people avoid them.
And less weight.
Yeah. But that's one of those situations where I'm like, I don't want you to change it. Or even like some people I just have doing a ton of split squats. And they're like, I want to do back squats. Like, well, you have horrible mobility. You have a history of low back injuries. We're doing everything unilateral because I want you to split the load and then distribute the load differently than compressing your spine.
Yeah.
So there's always an it depends. Yeah. So there are some times where it's okay, but for the most part, like especially order of exercises, I really prefer people not to touch it.
Yeah.
And I think to me, like programming is such a work of art. It's like just leave it.
Yeah.
That's what you hired us for.
I agree. I got so many things going through my head. I'm just like, for that split squat situation you just said, like people are like, hey, I want to do this, but you have lower back issues. There's a reason why I did this split squat, blah, blah. Well, then they go off and do the other one, and then they get injured.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, I got injured with split squats. No, you did. You did.
Yeah.
You don't know. You don't got a camera on them or whatever. But then they're injured, and then they're like, oh my God, blah blah. But shit happens.
Yeah.
It all depends. And
that's why, like, I think one of the things we focus on so much is like connection-based coaching. Like
Amen.
As coaches, because
relationship.
Yeah, because then we don't have to worry about them lying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's clients who. Like
you've done this long enough, you could sniff that out.
100%. and I know how to coach our coaches on how to better be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that our coaches are really good about that. But I think that
it's happened so many times to you.
Yeah, and now to them. You know what I mean? They've all worked with hundreds of people since being on the team. So I think it's helpful. But I think that at the end of the day, like when you create that trust and that buy-in, they're way less likely to lie, and you don't have to worry about that.
Absolutely.
But it only comes from trying to create that connection, leaving an open door. So. Because I've had, it's extreme. Like the percentage of people who mistrack or miscalculate macros is actually really high.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So a lot of times
it's really difficult, dude.
It is.
Yeah.
And some people will say like, oh, well, like my client's only eating 1,200 calories and not losing weight, and I'm like, they're not eating 1,200 calories. Yeah. They're like, well, they say they're adhering. I'm like, I know they say that, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like there's probably
maybe not even on purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to really go into the weeds with them, and I'll be like, hey, I'm going to go through your food log. Actually go into MyFitnessPal, and I look at everything, and I look for things that are weird. Like I had one guy I can think of who was really stuck at a plateau, and he was eating, it was like 100 grams of this, or maybe it was less. It might have been like 50 grams of like some kind of ground beef. And he lives in the Netherlands, so it's not called ground beef, but it's basically ground beef. And I was like, hey, I think there's some like measuring issues. And he's like, no, like I've been measuring everything, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you mentioned 50 grams of ground beef. That's like, like the size of my thumb. Like it's like a tablespoon or two. That's like one bite of ground beef. Who eats one bite of ground beef in a meal? Like,
yeah.
And he's like, no. I was like, I had a whole bowl. Like that was my whole thing. And I was like, yeah, I think you mean like 500 grams. And it's like, oh, and then that quadruples, if not more, the 10x the calorie consumption.
Yeah.
So he was like eating 700 calories a day, and he's like, I don't understand how you expect me to eat that much, because I had him on like 2,000 calories. And I was like, well, let me look through your logs. And I started pinpointing everything. And I was like, oh, change this. Hey, do you track oil? No, I didn't even think about that. Oh, yeah, well, oil has a ton of fat in it, so track that. Did you put your fish oil in there? No. Okay, put that in there. And so sometimes you have to go beyond just the numbers on a piece of paper. You have to actually, like, in a way, micromanage them, right? And, like, kind of hold their hand through it, because they don't know, which is fine.
Yep. But you can't always, quote-unquote, trust what they're saying because they're uneducated as
exactly. But the problem is
the
some people will be like, oh, they're not losing weight. Okay, let's drop their calories. And really, I'm like, they're not even hitting those calories. So let's just fix the adherence issue.
Yeah. And then if you fix it and they're not, then we'll go a different route.
Well, and this is actually the case where, like, there's, like, we call it hyper responders. When somebody reverse diets and loses weight, like I add calories and they lose weight. I actually believe that more often than not, it's because of this. So I have a client I can think of right now who we increased her calories up pretty high. Mm-hmm. And she started dropping weight, and she's losing weight right now. And I truly believe that the reason she's losing weight while increasing food is not because she is eating more food and it's ramping up her metabolism or anything like that. I actually think it's because as we reverse dieted her, I also taught her how to actually measure. So it's not a reverse diet increasing fat loss. It's the combination of a reverse diet, which helps manage stress, but also like me teaching her how to track alcohol, how to track your food better, how to use a food scale. Like, so beforehand she was like, oh, I'm eating next to nothing. And she was technically, but I think she was so inaccurate that she was actually eating way more. And I can kind of read that now, where I'll see a client's intake form. I'm like, okay, you're eating about 1,100 calories a day, but based on your food logs and based on what you're telling me, I guarantee you're mistracking here. You're probably misweighing here. Your weekends probably don't look like you're telling me they look. They're probably a little bit off, because there's a lot of times where people track through the week, and then all of a sudden you see them eat breakfast on Saturday and then nothing else. Like, oh, you just ate nothing all day Saturday. No, it's because you went out for lunch, then you went out for dinner, and then you had some drinks. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I do the same thing.
Yep.
So, but like learning how to pick those out as a coach,
True.
is so important.
Yep. Comes with the profession.
I don't even remember what the question was, but I think we answered it.
Yeah.
Before I went on that rant.
Yeah. When it comes to the order of exercise in a program, it doesn't matter if you can change it around.
Yeah. And weigh your food.
Yeah. All right. Next question is I'm practicing talking louder. What training differences are there for men and women?
People are going to be pissed at They're like, "Hey, your co-host is too loud."
What?
We turned his mic up, everybody.
Yeah. This thing is screaming loud.
We've had multiple people notice, so we are acknowledging that. And that's my bad too for not listening to the podcast ever. I really don't like listening to the podcast.
Listen to your own voice.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird to me.
It's not bad.
My voice isn't bad?
No.
Oh.
No. Well,
thank you.
No, it's not bad that you don't listen to it.
Yeah.
You're the one that said it.
Well, if I would have been listening to it more, I probably would have caught the volume issue.
I know.
You know what I mean?
But I'm saying that in my opinion, there's no reason for you to listen to what you've said.
I've already said it.
Yeah. That's why you listen to other people's.
Yeah. And sometimes when you listen to it, you begin to doubt. You're like, oh, fuck, that sounds stupid.
Yeah, or
I should have said this instead.
Yeah.
So I learned my lesson way early on. Like,
overanalyzing.
Yeah, I'm not going to listen to it. Because there's been times where, like, I remember the first time I did a Monday motivation episode.
I got to re-record this.
Yeah. I listened to it and I was like, oh, that's horrible. But I was going out of town. I was like, I need to air something. So I just put it out. And I had a ton of people DM me like, that was one of the best episodes you've done in so long. It was the first Monday motivation one. But I felt so stupid after I listened to it the first time. So after that, I was like, I'm never going to listen to these again. But difference between men and women.
Training.
This has kind of gone back and forth. Like I think, historically speaking, a lot of people said there was a lot of differences. And then kind of science came out and was like, oh, wait, nope. All the same principles apply. Volume, intensity, so on and so forth. Maybe in different realms. I know they did a study, and I think it's a hormonal thing. I want to say it's because estrogen has an effect on the cardiovascular system. Women produce more estrogen, therefore they have typically a better cardiovascular system. So if you have a better cardiovascular system, you can probably handle more cardio, believe it or not. And if you have a better cardiovascular system / oxidative system, you're going to recover faster. So for years, I always noticed like women are like, they finish their set, they're like, all right, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, whoa, like take a rest. Like let's lift heavy, let's slow down. And guys, I'm like, hey, come on, let's go. It's time for your next set. And it's like 5 minutes later, And I think it's because of this. Like when they have a higher estrogen dominance, they have a better cardiovascular system. They recover faster, so they're not huffing and puffing as long after a set. So I think the main differences are just that. I think women are going to recover a little bit faster between sets, so they can probably take shorter rest periods. I don't know if this is related. It might be, but typically I notice women can handle more volume than men. And I also think part of that is because, and this isn't like a black and white statement, but most men are stronger than women.
Yeah.
Like I have clients that can outperform me in many things and a lot of my other clients, but
just the average majority.
The average majority, like men, they're bigger and they're probably going to be stronger. So especially because if you look at like where their muscle mass is held, like a girl might be able to squat just as much as a guy, like relative to body weight, but his bench press is going to be better because genetically and biologically speaking, he has bigger chest muscles, shoulder muscles, like that's how we're built. So knowing that we go a little bit heavier, we probably can't handle as much volume because our intensity is higher, right? And that also might be why women can recover quicker. But there also is that estrogen factor, which is a sex hormone that might influence the cardiovascular system. So there's that. There's the recovery thing. There's the potentially more volume, which could just be because they lift lighter, or it could be because of this estrogen thing. And then the last part is just exercise selection. Like, I do way more glute work in a female's program than any male's program because I've had one guy in my entire life probably say, hey, I need bigger glutes. I shouldn't even say that because no guy has ever said that to me, but they have said I need better glutes because some guys have like really weak glutes and it's like, hurting their low back or it's making their deadlift perform squat, everything. So there's definitely guys that we've worked on glute strength. And I do a lot of glute strength, but nobody like coming from a guy who has put on a good amount of weight, dude, trying to put on slacks, It's like the most annoying thing when you put on some size. Like I put on slacks or even like when we went to dinner for my birthday. Shannon bought me new black jeans for my birthday because like recently before I went to wear my black jeans and they were like, dude, like spandex. And I was like, oh, fuck, I can't wear these.
Yeah.
Like I like skinnies, but they're like, these are tights.
Spandex.
So she bought me new jeans. It's funny. But point being is like guys don't want that. I want huge quads, but I don't want a big glute, you know.
Yeah.
But so exercise selection changes. You know, I'm not going to program a ton of chest. For women, I'll program more shoulders. I'll program more quads for guys, more glutes and hamstrings for girls. Back is probably going to be the same for everybody. Guys, I do way more bicep and tricep work because they want bigger arms. So it really is just it's not because women can't work on their bench press or work on their chest strength. It's just that it's not as important to them.
Yeah, or enjoyable.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
It's just not like even for me, like you know,
generically speaking.
Yeah, and that's also because usually what you're good at, you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So I love doing like heavy rows because that's my strongest like suit is just I can row a lot of weight. So I want to do more and more of it. I don't really necessarily need to do more rowing. Like my back's fine, but I just love it because I'm good at it. Sometimes it's an opposite too because I know for me, like I've always sucked at squatting because of all the knee injuries and surgeries I've had. But ever since this last surgery that went so well, I've just been obsessed with squatting.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing today after this. Like, I just love squatting because now I can do it and I can load it up and I'm like, perfect. But yeah, that's, I mean, for the most part, it's just women recover a little bit faster between sets. They potentially may be able to do more volume, which could just be from lower intensity in their loads. And then last but not least, exercise selection kind of changes depending on the person.
Not as much as the gender, but the person. Yeah,
because even, you know, I have a guy right now, we're doing a shoulder specialization. Right, so he has way more volume on his shoulders because that's what he wants to grow. And then I have another guy; it's very broad. Everything's getting the same amount because generally he just wants to get bigger. Then I have another guy that we have a lot more bicep and tricep work because he just really wants huge arms. So it's like kind of depends.
For sure.
I'm doing a ton of quad work because that was one of the things I was like, dude, I want huge quads and I want to be able to squat a shit ton of weight.
Yeah.
So I squat 3 times a week, and I only have 2 leg days.
Damn.
Yeah. So I do back squats and front squats on one day.
Yeah.
It's like 6 sets of squats, and then I do front squats again on a second day. And that doesn't count like split squats or anything like that. So
big squat guy.
Like the worst thing ever is like usually when I get home from the gym, Shannon's like cooking dinner, and she at least half the time she's like, "Hey, can you go change Blakely's diaper?" I'm like, yeah, pick her up, and I'm like, oh, walk up the stairs. It's like so hard. Sometimes I'm just like, hey, you can walk. I don't gotta carry you anymore because that shit is tough.
All right. Let's see here. How long should my rest periods be between sets? Good old 2-letter word or two-word answer.
It depends. Actually, even better, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. There we go.
Well, it does matter. So it depends what you're doing. If you're doing strength training, which is most common when people ask me this, I say at least 2 minutes, upwards of 5. Like, okay. I think that, you know, if you do...
Either or is not going to...
No, I mean...
hurt or help.
No, because I can do a set of squats, take 2 minutes, and squat pretty well again.
But 5 minutes is... It's obviously 2 minutes is not going to hurt you, but 5 minutes is going to help because more
time to recovery.
Yeah.
But for some people, it has the opposite effect because... Two things. One, some people actually get like kind of stiff if they wait too long, you know? And some people... get antsy. So for me, I actually I watch the clock.
Dude, yeah, 5 minutes is a long time.
When I watch the clock, I literally will do a squat set and I'm like, all right, I'm ready. And it's been a minute and I'm like, oh fuck, okay, let me wait longer.
Yeah.
So I usually watch the song that's playing and I use that as a timer.
It's like 3 minutes or so.
Yeah. And so I usually take 2 to 3 minutes because I'm antsy when I train. I'm like, I like to go. But for some people, 5 minutes is fine. There's even studies that show like 8 minutes being beneficial because for some people, they need that recovery. And again, like...
or lose their mind.
Like last week, I was working up to, on the trap bar, like, I think it was 465. And I was doing sets of 1, right? I was taking a solid 3, 4, 5 minutes in between sets because more than anything, I just didn't want to hurt my back from rushing, you know? And I was doing them fine. It wasn't like absolute maximum load. But it was enough for me to be like, I'm going to take longer than 2 minutes.
For sure.
But on a front squat... 2 minutes is totally fine. So I think anywhere between 2 to 5 minutes for like compound lifts. For accessory exercises, 1 to 2 minutes is usually best. I would say 1 to 3 minutes, depending on the person, because for some people, a heavy dumbbell lunge is actually really hard. So they need that 3 minutes. For other people, 1 minute is fine.
1 minute doesn't seem like enough.
It doesn't when you say 1 minute, but if you're actually
resting.
Yeah.
Okay.
1 minute's a good amount of time.
For sure.
Anything less than that, I think, is just too much. You're just not managing fatigue well. You're not letting the lactate leave the system. You're not letting yourself recover from a cardiovascular oxidative perspective. But it also depends on the difficulty of the movement for you. Some people like a dumbbell walking lunge or like a barbell walking lunge. Like that is an accessory exercise. But when we did those last week and I walked across the gym and back, dude, I was so gassed. My heart was pounding. I had to sit down. I was taking 4 minutes. But a dumbbell walking lunge, that can probably take 2 minutes. A dumbbell reverse lunge, that could take 1 minute. So it kind of depends on the exercise. But usually 1 to 3 minutes for accessory / isolation work, 2 to 5 minutes for compound work. And then for supersets, it's basically as long as it takes to get to the next exercise, and then the others apply to it. So if you're doing a dumbbell bench press superset with a seated cable row, you might take 30 seconds in between because it's really just how long does it take me to set the dumbbells down, walk over there, set up, and go.
Yeah.
You're basically going right to it. And then you'll go back to that. After that, you take that 2 to 3 minutes before going back to the first set again.
Definitely. Completely different exercises.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times people, back in the day, they thought time under tension was more important for muscle growth. So if I rested 1 minute or less, there's more tension in the muscle, so I can accumulate more fatigue, which to an extent you do. You get a burning sensation. You get a way nastier pump if you take shorter rest periods, but you can't lift as heavy. You usually can't do as many reps, and that's really what's more important for muscle growth than a pump.
Yeah.
So the whole time under tension thing was kind of debunked, and now it's more 1 to 3 minutes for exercises that are isolation or accessory, 2 to 5 minutes for compound. But really, how long does it take you to recover personally? That's how long you should recover. Because
how do you determine that?
You just gotta trial and error. You gotta test it out.
Yeah.
That's why when I give recommendations inside my programs, it usually says 1 to 3 minutes or 2 to 5 minutes, or it doesn't say anything. And people ask me hey, what should I rest between sets?
You tell me.
And I'm like, you should rest as long as you need.
Yeah.
In order to perform as well as you did the first set.
So
if I do 4, today I'm gonna squat for 5. I think we're working up to 265, 275 for squats. And after I get done with that set, the first set, rack it. I'm gonna wait until I am I know I can do that same weight for 5 reps again. But if I rush it and I'm this is iffy, then I haven't waited long enough.
Yeah.
If I'm at the 5 minute mark and I'm still fuck, then it means I'm just having a bad day.
Yeah.
or I went too heavy.
Yeah. But you're talking, this is your trial and error. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying if you wait 2 minutes and you're still not, and you do it and you're like, damn, that wasn't enough. And then you get obviously you just do it and you go a little bit longer and then until you're like, damn. But again, there's a point to where
yeah,
you're just not rested.
Yeah. In life. And sometimes that depends too on how much time do you have in the gym.
Yeah.
So that's why you do supersets usually. If you're in a hurry, superset stuff take a little bit less time. You're going to have to sacrifice some load on the bar, but do you get all the work in or do you get way less work in at a heavier weight? I would probably get all the work in, get as much as you can out of that workout. But yeah, I think in the only other time that it actually does matter is in conditioning, because literal conditioning, conditioning work, is how much work can you do in this period of time, then take this short of a rest before returning to that intensity. So it might be 4 minutes of a circuit and then 2 minute rest, right? That 2 minutes matters because you're not getting the same conditioning effect or performance effect if you take 30 seconds instead of 2, or if you take 5 minutes instead of 2. So in conditioning, it does matter more, but it's a completely different perspective. If we're talking strength and hypertrophy and muscle growth and fat loss even, it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. There's a much, much bigger fatigue factor when muscle building.
Yep.
Cool. I think that's great. All right. Some of these. All right. Next question says, does tempo matter? If so, when does it and why does it?
Tempo is actually just like the rest period thing. It's almost like most of the time it really doesn't matter. Because
this might be stupid, but what do they mean by tempo?
How
fast you bench press, or
yeah.
resistance?
So that's a good that you asked that, because there's probably other people listening that are wondering. tempo is going to be like, how long is the negative, the pause, and the concentric?
Okay.
The positive. So eccentric, pause, concentric. So I'm lowering the bar for 3 seconds, pausing for 1, and then pressing 1 second. That's a tempo, right? So
for bench press.
For bench press. Or for squat, lowering with the bar, whatever it may be. And typically when you write tempos, you go like 3, 1, 1.
Yep.
That would be negative, the end pause, and then the concentric.
Yep.
Some people put another letter for the top pause, but
3-1 explosive.
Exactly. So I usually put an X for explosive. So I'll be like 3, 1, X, 1, because I want them to do a full pause at the top before returning back to the next rep. But the only time it matters is if we're trying to learn a movement pattern better or gain control, or even prevent injury, right? Because, if we're looking at, like somebody comes to me and they're like, I know how to do all the exercises. I'm advanced. I have no injuries. I just want to, build as much muscle and strength as possible.
Yeah.
Which is like some of the guys I have, or girls. I'm not doing any tempo.
Yeah.
Because if I give you a 3-second negative, you won't be able to lift as heavy. If you can't lift as heavy, that is less volume, and you'll get less growth.
Yep.
There is some validity to saying that a slow eccentric, like going, 10 seconds down, that will lead to more muscle growth because you're tearing more of the muscle fibers, and then that creates more muscle damage, which they're like, is muscle damage really that important for muscle growth, or is it just a correlation? So when you train hard, you build muscle, you also get some muscle damage because you trained hard.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the muscle damage caused the muscle growth necessarily. Maybe a little bit, but it's hard to tell by the evidence they have. But there used to be like that. So we would do these long, slow negatives. It didn't matter how much you were lifting, because if you do the slow negative, then you can grow more. But what they found is in the study where volumes equated, it actually doesn't do anything for growth, because it actually diminishes growth because the load drops so much. Because if you do a slow negative, you're just fatiguing yourself out more, right? So this comes right back to fatigue management. I think fatigue management is such an important thing that people forget about. However, there are studies that show more muscle growth with long negatives, but you have to be overloaded. So in that sense, it's like we're doing a bench press, you're spotting me, I lower it down as slow as I can, but you help me up because I can't even press it.
Yeah.
So for me, I can rep 225 for like 5 reps, right?
Yeah.
That's like me going, all right, we're going to do 5 negative reps, and I'm going to do 275.
Yeah.
I can lower 275 for 5 reps for sure.
Yeah.
But I
5
can't.
reps?
Oh, yeah. But I can't press it.
Yeah.
Because the difference between those two loads.
What's the benefit in the negative?
You just tear the muscle fibers more, and you can overload the nervous system a little bit more. So, but that's the whole point. The only way to get that benefit out of it is if I overload it.
Yeah.
So you have to pick a weight that you literally can't lift. You can only lower, and somebody has to help you. And they make tools like this actually really cool. Like they make I can't remember what they're called, but it's like a hook that goes over the bar, and then it has like these plates that hang. But as soon as they touch the floor, it releases the hook.
Yeah, Theo had me doing that.
Yeah, so plate release.
Yeah.
So if I lower, I'm lowering super slow. Boom, they hit the ground, then I can press up the lighter weight.
Yeah.
Super dope. Unfortunately, you can't rep it out, though. It's only one rep thing.
Yeah.
But they make this thing it's so cool. It's for a cable machine, and you put like these spacers in it, and they basically hold the weights until you let the weights touch on the weight stack. So if I'm doing rows and I'm just not letting it touch the weight stack, I can just keep repping it out. When I fatigue, I go all the way down. The plate stacks touch each other.
Cuts at 20%.
And it pops out the plug, and then your next plug is 30 pounds lighter, and you keep repping. I saw John Meadows with it on his Instagram. It was fucking dope.
Wow.
I want to find one of those because we got the lat pull down will be here in 5 or 6 weeks. But with tempos, they're just not that productive for aesthetic change. However, if somebody comes to me and they're like, I have a shoulder issue. Well, I want to still generate as much tension in the muscle without hurting the shoulder. So I'm probably going to do a 5-second negative, 2-second concentric on their dumbbell bench press because it slows them down and it keeps focus on the muscle. It's easier on their joint because if they're going fast, they can't control the movement of the joint itself. So if I slow it down, they're like, okay, focus, keep my shoulder packed, keep the tension on the muscle, press up slowly. So for some people, it's like a learning thing. Like, hey, we're going to do slow tempos because I want you to learn how to use this movement properly and not fuck yourself up.
Yeah.
And just keep tension in the muscle, right? Whereas other people, it just is making your load go down and it's just affecting your performance all around. Like it's just not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it really just depends on the person. The only time I ever use it is if somebody needs to learn how to accomplish a movement better. I use it a lot in like beginner programs or like the early phases of a new program because it teaches people how to do the movement. So I might go, we're doing 5-second negatives on this for 2 weeks, and then we're doing no negative because I want you to go heavier and actually do it right now because you spent time going lighter and mastering the movement. Yeah. And I would also say the only other time is when I have older clients, and older as in anybody who is really above 30 that is starting to have joint issues. So, there's some people who feel 50 at 30, and there's some people that feel 30 at 50. There's some people that like treat their body really well.
Yeah.
But I also have people, even myself, I'm 28 now, and I have joint issues just from soccer, martial arts, tearing my meniscus 3 fucking times, like all the different stuff I've done. So my body is a little bit more wear and tear than the typical 28-year-old. But when I have that concern with people, like, okay, they have some joint issues, they have a long history of athletics, or they're 40, 50, 60, I'm probably going to use more negatives and more slow tempos because I just don't want the risk of injury.
Yeah.
Even for myself with a heavy squat, I still try to control the negative because I don't want to just drop on my joints and tear my meniscus for the 4th time.
Yeah, for sure.
But so they do come in handy, but it's not because tempos lead to muscle growth or strength. It's because tempos usually lead to better motor control and learning and safety of the movement.
For sure. Dope. Yeah. Great explanation. All right. This is our last question for this part 2. This one says, what impact on fat loss does NEAT have?
Way bigger of an impact than most people realize.
Yeah.
So non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So the reason it has so much effect on it is because NEAT is this. NEAT is everything you do. NEAT is me moving.
That's not training.
That's not training.
Yeah.
Me moving my hands when I talk. Me blinking my eyes. Me chewing my food more. Like literally. Me getting up out of my chair and walking more. Me standing up more.
Yeah.
How many steps I take per day. Everything that I'm doing that is not me purposefully acting in the gym to burn calories or exercise is NEAT. Therefore, NEAT makes up the majority of your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, which is like your overall metabolism. How many calories do you burn per day? Your total daily energy expenditure is mostly affected by NEAT. So how big of an effect does it have? It's a massive effect. Like, how much can you alter it? Unfortunately, not a ton, because as you diet, you have low energy availability, which is basically just saying I have less food coming in, less energy. When I have less energy, dude, I don't talk like this.
Yeah.
I don't blink as much. I don't talk as much. I don't walk as much. I don't stand as much. I sleep longer, because I'm tired, right? So NEAT drops when your calories drop, and it's very hard to counteract that. And the only way you can do it is like track your steps, track how many hours a day you're standing.
How many words you say?
Yeah, you can't track a lot of that, but your steps is really all you can control. So like, usually when I diet, I do like wearing my Apple Watch because I like to at least track that. And I'm not trying to increase my NEAT as I diet. I'm trying to maintain it because when I'm at maintenance or a surplus,
it's gonna lower.
It's gonna lower compared to that. So if I'm normally like right now, like I normally walk about anywhere between 9,000 to 11,000 steps a day. And that's not me like trying to walk more. It's just because I'm eating enough food where I tend to get up and move more, and I'm walking. I take a walk in the morning. It's just my routine. When I start dieting, my goal is to maintain that 9,000 to 11,000, because if I can do that, then
it could easily go down.
Exactly, and I'm minimally affecting it as I diet, which usually it's maximally affected when you diet. And that's really all you can do about it. I don't think, and you can also like you hit a plateau. You could add cardio, you could cut calories, or you could just go, hey, I'm doing 10,000 steps right now. I'm going to aim for 13,000 a day. Technically, that is doing more cardio because you would be moving more, walking more, but it might mean like 4 or 5 minute walks a day, like something very small for infrequently to get those extra 3,000 steps. That 3,000 steps increases your NEAT, burns more calories, you will lose more weight.
Yep.
So NEAT is probably one of one of the most important aspects of sustainable fat loss, but it's also one of the most affected aspects inside of metabolic adaptation. A lot of people are like, they talk about metabolic adaptation, and yes, there are some hormonal consequences with that. We know cortisol increases, testosterone decreases, thyroid decreases, which all have effect on metabolism. However, your NEAT is the greatest portion of what metabolically adapts and lowers. So when you have metabolic adaptation and you're like, man, I was on a diet and now I'm eating way less calories and I'm not losing weight anymore because I'm metabolically adapted, try increasing your NEAT, because usually what happened is like, yeah, you're eating less, but you're also burning way less. And that's what your metabolic adaptation is. Going back to the reverse diet thing, some people who are quote unquote hyper responders, we feed them more food and their steps go through the roof. They're talking more, they're fidgeting more, they're doing more, they're training harder. And they're like, man, I'm responding so well to this food. It's like, yeah, you're just moving more.
Yeah.
You don't realize it because you just have more energy. The only times like where people will tell me like, I think my NEAT's going up is when they're like my husband or my wife says I'm like way more enjoyable to be around because I'm more talkative, I'm more engaging, I'm more excited, I'm more energetic. That tells me that you were eating more food and you were doing more because of that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's one of those things that's super, super important, but it's pretty damn hard to manage and alter.
Absolutely.
Besides step.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Or track.
Yeah.
For sure. Man, that's good. All right, guys. That's going to wrap this portion of the training FAQs up.
We are going to do a nutrition FAQ soon.
Yep.
Next week. And I will say this too, like, I know this isn't a Q&A, but click the link in the description. Drop us a question if you have ideas for an FAQ.
Yep.
There's no character limit in that field. We appreciate when you summarize things just because it helps us ask the question better. But if you're like, man, like I have like 20 questions, fire them away in that short style. Like, what's better, supersets or single sets? That's a really easy question to ask. So if you guys have ideas for an FAQ, we'll keep doing these, but just drop them all in the question box and we'll go from there.